It's been 9 years since the first episode of The Blacklist aired on NBC, and since then, the show hasn't really evolved much, but that's not always a bad thing. At this point, fans may have forgotten a number of things that happened in that pilot episode, and in this video, we'll talk about 10 things you forgot from the first episode of The Blacklist. Let's get started. First up, Reddington's surrender to the FBI. From the very first few minutes of the pilot episode, it was evident that Reddington always knew exactly what he was doing. The pilot episode began with Red, whom we saw sitting outside the FBI building in New York City. He met with an old friend, Newton Phillips, who handed him a briefcase that's filled with confidential information and aliases. He then proceeds to walk into the building and asks to see the assistant director of the FBI. Did you notice his ease and confidence? He also removed his coat, hat, and jacket while confidently declaring his name.
All for the good.
Agnes is fine.
What if I wanted to see her?
This was obviously intentional, since the minute the security personnel checked the system for his name, an alert comes up. Now, Reddington was put on the arrest on sight list, and as soon as the warning alarms go off, he gets on his knees while the camera focuses on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, which has him ranked at number 4. Up next, the terrorist that came back from the dead. According to the information the FBI had, well-known terrorist Ranko Zamani was believed to be dead. The Serbian was the one behind the attack at the US Embassy in Damascus in 1986, as well as the kidnapping of French nationalists in Algiers in 1997. But while Reddington was in captivity, he made a deal to offer them Zamani. Now, the FBI felt like he was clearly bluffing since Zamani had been long known to be dead, but Reddington came to them with very specific information which revealed that the Serbian had stepped out of a plane at 10:30 a.m. that morning. The FBI checked the security cameras at the airport and confirmed Red's intel to be true. Well, it looks like Zamani managed to fake his death several years ago. Moving on to the adoption. The first time we saw Liz was when she was shown in bed with her husband Tom. The two had overslept thanks to an unscheduled power outage. But the family dog managed to wake them up, and thank God he did. Tom's a school teacher while Liz is running behind on the first day of her job as an FBI profiler. Naturally, in near panic mode, Liz jumps out of bed to start prepping for her day while Tom does his best to help her out. While getting ready, they also briefly discuss a possible meeting during lunch with an adoption agency later in the day.
I'm not proud of it, but there is a certain amount of twisted internal logic. But what you're doing, there's no logic to it at all. You tell Peter about the diagnosis.
You can literally see their eyes light up at the possibility of having a baby. The two had been trying to have a child for a long time. But later in the show, we discover that Liz eventually gives birth to her daughter Agnes, following up with Reddington demanding to speak to Liz. Reddington's relationship with Liz has been quite an interesting one from the very beginning. As we saw in the pilot episode, when the FBI started taunting Reddington about the fact that he had no leverage, he went on to reveal that he was in fact working with Zamani and could cause a lot of damage if his claims weren't taken seriously.
It's stupidity that drives me like the Sahara. And killing a federal agent and snatching an innocent family, that's about as stupid as you can get.
I already told you, it's not your brand anymore.
After his reveal, he dropped a second bombshell, that he would only speak to the newest FBI agent, Liz, but no one in the room knows who she is. Naturally, the FBI wondered why he chose her specifically, and as Liz was leaving for work with Tom, a helicopter appeared to pick her up right outside her house. She was then taken to Assistant Director Cooper and questioned on why Reddington specifically wanted to talk to her. Liz figured it was probably because he assumed she was weaker than others on account of being new. Coming up next is Beth's kidnapping. Most of you may have forgotten Daniel Riker since he only briefly appeared in the series. He was portrayed as a general who destroyed a bunch of chemical weapons during the Yugoslavia wars, and it was during this destruction that Ranko Zamani's family ended up being killed. Naturally, because of this, Zamani vowed to take revenge to avenge his family's death and wanted to make Riker pay. Now, the FBI had gotten intel on the planned abduction of Riker's daughter Beth, and she was promptly taken out of class to begin her transportation to a safer place. But on the way, they were completely ambushed and Beth was abducted as planned. As Liz works on finding the kidnapped girl, Reddington pinpoints her exact location in an attempt to help her, then sends an expert to defuse the bomb. Sounds like he wanted her to trust him, right? Let's talk about Liz's scar. We all know Reddington has his scars, but during an interrogation scene, he notices the scar on Liz's arm and questions her about it. This was the first time we saw Liz's scar. In future episodes, it became somewhat of a mystery symbol. At one point, Liz claimed that her father gave it to her, but at the same time, it was also suggested that she got the scar after she was burned as a child. Which one is it? The interesting thing is that the scar also resembled a bunch of other things, such as the box Tom kept at the apartment. But the story behind the scar kinda took a backseat for the rest of the seasons. The show also eventually revealed that Reddington's back was highly scarred.
I only bought the heirloom to gain access to something that is. The name of the client who entrusted you with the Sacra Cindola.
I'm sure you can appreciate the need for complete comfort.
which led several fans to think that he was in the same fire as Liz. Would have made for some great storytelling, right? Next up, we have Reddington's deal. When Liz was in the middle of questioning Reddington regarding the kidnapping of Riker's daughter, he offered to help the FBI to collect information to bring her back home safely, but he had a few conditions in exchange for offering help. First, he asked to be set free. He identified two persons of interest called the banker and the chemist, the latter being a manufacturer of dangerous chemical weapons.
Is that painting really worth $1 million?
This? Oleg stole this off the wall of a Four Seasons in Maui. But it makes for...
He then made demands to be set up in his favorite hotel to do his job better. He later added a request for his own security detail and a highly expensive tracking chip. While Ressler was skeptical of all these demands, the FBI reluctantly gave in and decided to agree to his conditions. Moving on to the surprise Liz gets at home. After missing the super important adoption appointment, Liz comes home to see balloons and a card with the message, "It's a girl." Liz gets excited and thinks that Tom made it to the appointment and managed to adopt a baby girl. Now, Tom was facing away from the entrance of the house, so Liz thinks that he was holding the baby. She goes to pour herself a glass of wine and is ready to celebrate with her husband, but as soon as she turns around, she sees that Tom is all tied up. Zamani then appears practically out of nowhere and demands to know what the FBI knows of his plans. But in the most shocking turn of events, Zamani proceeds to stab Tom and leaves, leaving fans everywhere absolutely stunned. Let's discuss Reddington's escape. Now, Red has always been a few steps ahead of the game with several tricks up his sleeve. After Liz stabs him with a pen, he briefly escapes from FBI custody to go out and meet up with Zamani, the Serbian terrorist. The FBI immediately puts out an APB on him, thinking that he's trying to flee for good. But we realize that Reddington only tried to escape so he could stop Zamani from attacking a zoo. Turns out he had removed his own tracking chip. Remember that hella expensive one? And put it inside Zamani's pill bottle. That's how the FBI was able to get Zamani's exact location to find him. And Ressler promptly shoots him dead. Liz then finds Beth at a zoo with a backpack that has a bomb. But luckily, the bomb is deactivated just in time. Finally, Reddington reveals Tom's true identity. Whether you believe it or not, Reddington actually clued in on Tom's shady life right from the get-go. Throughout the episode, he keeps dropping clues to let Liz know that he knows more about her than she might have imagined. Now, towards the end of the episode, Reddington finally tells Liz that Tom isn't really who she thinks he is. While her love for her husband makes her want to disregard Reddington's claims, his earnest support in helping her makes her dig deeper to find out the truth.
Any way you can kill, I can kill better. The Americans transformed Cuba's pea shooter model into a particularly fearsome iteration.
She discovers a box full of cash and passports of Tom's various identities under a floorboard in their home. Great hiding place, Tom. Way to go. But even then, she buys into the lie that they were most likely planted there to disrupt their lives. That's a wrap for this video. Do you have any thoughts on these things you may have forgotten from the Blacklist first episode? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.